That old box doesn't belong here. Vanessa didn't lower her voice. She wanted every guest nearby to hear it. A few people laughed. Someone shook their head as if I had carried a bag of trash into the Military Heritage Gala instead of a small weathered box that barely fit beneath my arm. What hurt wasn't her remark. It was the silence from my own family. Not one of them stepped forward. They simply looked away, leaving me to stand there alone. I could have turned around and walked out. Maybe that would have been easier. But years later, when I think back to that evening, I realize the cruelest words were never the ones Vanessa spoke. The real damage came from the people who loved me deciding that protecting appearances mattered more than protecting me. None of them understood that the moment they dismissed that little box, something had already begun that none of us could stop. If I had known how the night would end, I might have held the box a little tighter. Not because of what it contained, but because of a promise connected to it. A promise older than some of the people smiling at the cameras. There was also a forgotten name, 3 simple words from my past, and a memory no one in that ballroom seemed to recognize. Yet before the evening was over, someone would notice what everyone else had ignored, and the celebration would never feel the same again. Even then, I sensed a pair of eyes lingering on the box longer than they should have. No questions were asked. Not yet. But there was a hesitation that told me something wasn't being overlooked after all. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're listening from tonight. And as you listen, ask yourself this: have you ever kept an ordinary object because breaking a promise would have hurt far more than losing the object itself? But to understand how that gala changed everything, I need to take you back to where it really began. Vanessa did not raise her voice at first. That made it worse. She stood beside the display table with her polished badge, looking like someone correcting a mistake before important people noticed. "Eleanor," she said, "we need to talk about where that box belongs." "It only needs a small place," I said. Her smile tightened. "This is a curated heritage event. Everything in the main hall has been approved." A camera swept across the room. Vanessa noticed it too. "I'm sure it means something to you," she said, "but sentiment isn't the same as historical value." That word, sentiment, landed harder than trash. Marcus stood near the donor wall. He heard every word. His eyes met mine for 1 second before dropping away. Vanessa turned slightly. "Marcus, you understand, don't you? We can't have unverified items in the central exhibit." He swallowed. "Maybe we should keep things smooth tonight." It was not cruel. That was what made it hurt. He chose peace with the room over standing beside me in it. I nodded once, because some silences are louder than insults. The box had survived dust, storage rooms, and years of being forgotten. I had not expected the first threat to come from family. Lily saw more than the adults wanted her to see. She stood near the table, holding a program booklet, watching my hands. "Grandma Eleanor," she whispered, "why aren't you upset?" Vanessa gave a laugh. "Lily, sweetheart, this is grown-up event management." But Lily looked at the box. I ran my thumb along the lid. "Because being loud doesn't make something true." Lily frowned. Her eyes moved to the corner where a faded bit of fabric peeked from beneath the lid. She noticed how I protected that side with my palm. She noticed, too, that I was not afraid. Then Vanessa stopped pretending this was private. She stepped beside the main display and lifted one hand toward a volunteer. "Could you move this box to the back preparation area?" The volunteer hesitated. "Is it part of the Whitcomb donation?" "No," Vanessa said. "It is not part of the approved exhibit." People turned. A veteran near the metal case glanced over. 2 donors paused. A live stream camera angled slightly in our direction. My cheeks warmed, but I kept both hands on the box. Vanessa lowered her voice. Please don't make this awkward. I wanted to tell her awkward had already arrived. Instead, I said, I can hold it. That isn't appropriate, she replied. The volunteer reached out. I did not let go. For the first time, Vanessa's smile slipped. Eleanor, everyone is trying to honor history tonight. Let's not distract from that. Honor history. Those words almost made me laugh, because they stood close to something she had dismissed. Across the room, a woman in a dark museum jacket turned her head. I had seen her earlier near the textile display. Priya Nair, someone had called her. She did not come over. She did not interrupt. But her gaze paused on the box, then on my hand covering the fabric at the edge. It was only a glance. Still, something changed the air. Vanessa noticed and stepped between us. We'll take care of this quietly, she said. But it was too late for quietly. Because someone had seen something the others had mocked, and I could not tell whether that would save the evening or make everything worse. The whispers began as soon as Vanessa stepped away from me. At first, they were small things, the kind people pretend are not meant to be heard. Did she bring that from home? I thought all displays had to be registered. Maybe she misunderstood the invitation. I kept both hands around the box and looked straight ahead. There are moments when defending yourself only gives people permission to question you harder. A man near the metal case leaned toward his wife. It looks like something from an attic. His wife answered, Poor woman. Poor woman. I had been called many things, but pity from strangers had a special sting. Vanessa seemed to feel the room turning in her favor. She moved with more confidence now, speaking to two volunteers. Nothing unverified stays in the primary hall, she said. We have sponsors here. Press. Veterans. This event has standards. One volunteer nodded. The other looked uncomfortable. Vanessa was not trying to be cruel. That was what made her dangerous. She truly believed she was saving the gala from embarrassment. She believed polished glass, bright labels, and approved plaques mattered more than the weathered thing in my arms. She did not notice the nearest camera light still glowing red. Lily edged closer while the adults discussed my box as though I were no longer holding it. Is it heavy? She asked. Not very, I said. Then why do you hold it like that? I looked down at my fingers. They were curved around one side with more care than I had realized. Because some things break long before they fall, I told her. Lily studied the cracked latch and the glimpse of old fabric under the lid. She had the kind of attention most adults lose after they decide they already understand. Can I see inside? She whispered. Not here, I said. Why not? Before I could answer, Vanessa returned. Eleanor, she said, smiling, let's not turn this into a scene. It is already a scene, Lily said quietly. Vanessa glanced at her. Then her eyes hardened. Across the hall, Priya Nair had moved closer to the textile display. She carried a clipboard, but she was no longer reading labels. Her gaze shifted toward my box and paused at the opening near the lid. Not the wood. Not the dust. Something inside. For the first time that night, someone looked at the box as though it might be more than a mistake. Vanessa noticed Priya's attention and stepped forward. Priya, she called lightly, we're handling a small placement issue. Priya did not answer. Is that item part of a family collection? She asked. Vanessa laughed softly. A personal keepsake, I believe. Nothing for the exhibit. Priya finally looked at her. May I ask who reviewed it? The question was gentle, but the room heard it. Vanessa's smile held, but barely. It was not submitted for review. That may be the problem, Priya said. No one spoke. The gala felt different now. People who had been whispering stopped pretending not to listen. A camera operator adjusted his angle. Marcus looked up. Vanessa gave a short laugh. Surely we don't need to delay the program over an old box. Priya took one slow step closer. I'm not looking at the box, she said. My fingers tightened. Vanessa frowned. Then what are you looking at? Priya did not answer. Her eyes had settled on one detail near the fabric, something almost everyone else had mistaken for age, damage, or meaningless thread. At that moment, I knew the night had shifted again. But attention can be dangerous before truth is ready. And as Priya kept staring, I felt the room beginning to close around me. The crowd had not moved closer, yet I felt surrounded. People kept their polite distance, the way they do when they want to watch discomfort without admitting they are watching. I stood between the display table and the velvet rope, holding a box no one wanted near the polished exhibits. Marcus was only a few steps away. Vanessa stood in front of me. Priya watched beyond them both. And somehow, I had never felt more alone. Eleanor, Vanessa said, no one is trying to disrespect you. I know, I said. But I knew something else too. I had accepted being misunderstood many times. It hurt every time. I accepted it because a promise can become heavier than pride, and some truths are not yours to spend whenever you feel wounded. Lily slipped beside me again. Is that why you won't open it? She whispered. I did not answer quickly enough. She looked down at the small gap beneath the lid. The fabric inside had shifted. A thin line of red thread crossed the faded cloth, almost hidden beneath years of creasing. Lily's eyes widened. There's red stitching. Vanessa heard her. It is old sewing, Lily, she said. A lot of antique fabric has loose thread. But Priya's expression changed. Only slightly. She did not gasp. She simply went still, the way trained people go still when they see something that requires care before words. May I see that edge? Priya asked. Vanessa stepped in. Priya, please. We're minutes from the donor presentation. I understand, Priya said. That is why I'm not making any claim. That sentence silenced the people closest to us. Not making any claim. It meant she had seen enough to be careful, but not enough to speak. It meant the thing everyone mocked had moved, for one dangerous moment, into the space between accident and significance. Marcus looked at me again. This time, I saw conflict in his face. He knew the box mattered. He knew I had never carried old objects into public rooms for attention. He even took half a step forward. Then Vanessa turned. Marcus, she said softly, help me keep this from becoming uncomfortable for everyone. His shoulders tightened. I waited. A lifetime can fit inside 1 second when you are waiting for family to choose you. Marcus looked toward the cameras, then toward the donors, then away from me. I think Eleanor just needs a quieter place, he said. There it was again. A gentle sentence doing the work of betrayal. Vanessa nodded, relieved. Exactly. She pointed toward the rear archive corner. We can place it there until after the program. No one is taking it from you. We're simply preserving the dignity of the evening. The dignity of the evening. Not mine. Not the promise inside the box. The evening. I lifted the box closer to my chest. It stays with me. Vanessa's smile vanished. Then you are forcing me to make a decision publicly. Priya's eyes remained fixed on the red thread. Lily whispered, why does it matter so much? I could have ended it there. One explanation might have stopped Vanessa. One truth might have pulled Marcus back. But it was not the right time. And as an older man near the far wall suddenly turned his head at Lily's words, I realized someone else might remember what I had spent years trying not to say. My family did not gather around me to protect me. They gathered around to contain me. Marcus stood on my left. Lily stayed close, but someone gently pulled her back by the shoulder. Celeste Red appeared near Vanessa, whispering to a donor with the practiced sadness of someone watching an embarrassing relative ruin a formal evening. "Maybe we should all step aside," Marcus said. "All?" I asked. He looked at the box instead of my face. "Just until the program starts." That was when I understood the shape of the circle forming around me. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was worse. It was the quiet agreement that I should make myself smaller so the room could remain comfortable. Vanessa saw it too. Her voice softened, but only because she knew the cameras were still near. "Thank you, Marcus," she said. "No one wants Eleanor upset. We only want to protect the purpose of tonight." Protect. That word did a strange thing in my chest. The live stream camera stood less than 10 feet away, its red light burning steadily. Brandon Reed, Vanessa's nephew, was near the media station, checking a monitor and looking far too pleased with the angle. Every polite correction, every careful smile, every attempt to move my box was being recorded. Vanessa thought the room was finally hers. She did not understand that public confidence can become public evidence when truth arrives late. Near the far wall, the older man who had turned at Lily's question took one slow step forward. I recognized him only vaguely at first. Owen Hale. He had been invited as part of the veteran family circle, though age had bent his shoulders and softened his voice. His eyes were not on Vanessa. They were on the thin red line visible beneath the lid. "Where did you get that cloth?" he asked. The room shifted again. Vanessa frowned. "Mr. Hale, it's just an old keepsake." Owen did not seem to hear her. "I saw stitching like that once," he said. "A long time ago." My fingers tightened around the box. Priya noticed his reaction immediately. She turned from the textile display and studied him with the same careful attention she had given the fabric. "Mr. Hale," she said, "when you say you saw something like it, do you mean the color or the spacing?" Owen blinked, as if the question had pulled him from a room decades away. "The spacing," he said slowly. "At least. I think so." Vanessa gave a small, impatient laugh. This is exactly how rumors start. A loose thread becomes a museum emergency. Priya did not look offended. "It may be nothing," she said. "But if it is nothing, verification will show that." That was the first time the word verification entered the room. Not memory. Not sentiment. Verification. Marcus heard it. I saw him turn toward Priya, then toward me. Something in his face changed. For the first time that night, he seemed to understand that silence was no longer neutral. It had weight. It had consequences. It had already helped someone else decide what my truth was worth. He stepped closer. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "is there something I should know?" I looked at him for a long moment. There were many things he should have known. Some because he was family. Some because he had asked too late. Some because I had spent years protecting them from the weight of a story they had never been ready to carry. But I only said, "Not yet." His face fell. Lily pulled away from the hand on her shoulder. "Why not now?" "Because truth deserves the right witness," I said. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Or perhaps truth is being used as an excuse to disrupt an event." I did not answer her. For years, I had kept that box closed. Not because I was ashamed. Not because I had forgotten. I kept it closed because a promise made beside loss is not something you open just to defend your pride in a ballroom. Owen raised one trembling hand toward the box but stopped before touching it. There was a story, he murmured. A rescue route. Or maybe a mistake in the record. I was young when I heard it. Priya's eyes sharpened. A record mistake? Owen looked toward the portraits mounted above the main hall. Someone's name was left out. Or blamed. I can't remember which. The air seemed to leave the room. Vanessa's smile disappeared completely. Priya looked at the red thread again, then at me. And I knew the question had changed. It was no longer whether my old box belonged at the gala. It was whether the gala itself had been built around a version of history missing one name. Priya did not reach for the box right away. That restraint made the room even quieter. "Mrs. Whitcomb," she said, "would you allow me a closer look at the fabric edge?" Vanessa turned sharply. "Priya, we have a program schedule." "I know," Priya replied. "That is why I'm asking carefully." I looked down at the box. For years, I had feared the wrong hands more than silence. But Priya was not grabbing. She was not guessing. She was asking. "You may look," I said. "But please don't pull anything loose." Her expression softened. "I won't." Then she turned to one of the museum staff. "Find Dr. Ellison. Tell him I need textile verification in the main hall." Vanessa blinked. "A second specialist? For this?" "For the stitching," Priya said. The word moved through the crowd like a draft under a closed door. A few people exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "Textile verification?" Another said, "Maybe it is something." Vanessa heard them, and I saw control begin slipping from her face. At the media station, Brandon leaned toward his monitor. The live stream had not stopped. If anything, more viewers seemed to be joining. Comments were moving too quickly for me to read from where I stood, but I could see the changing numbers. Vanessa looked toward Brandon. "Can we cut away to the donor reel?" Brandon hesitated. "We're already live on the main feed." "Then switch angles." He glanced at the camera operator, then back at the monitor. "That may look worse." For the first time that evening, Vanessa had no clean way to remove the moment she had created. Priya put on a pair of thin white gloves. She did not open the box fully. She only lifted the lid enough to see the cloth edge and the red thread running along it. Dr. Ellison arrived almost breathless, an older man with narrow glasses and a folded magnifier in his hand. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Priya answered quietly. "Not a standard repair stitch. Look at the spacing." He leaned in. No one laughed now. His brow tightened. "That is deliberate." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Deliberate sewing is still sewing." Priya did not look away from the fabric. "Yes. But not all sewing is decoration. If you value stories where truth does not need to shout, where dignity outlasts judgment, then stay with this one. Some moments do not win by force. They win because the right witness finally looks closely enough. Lily stood beside me again, no longer asking to open the box. She watched Priya's hands with a kind of reverence I had not expected from someone so young. "So you waited," she whispered. I nodded. "For someone who knew what to look for?" "Yes." Her eyes filled with something quiet and new. Not pity. Not confusion. Respect. Marcus heard her. He looked at my hands, then at the red thread, then at the floor. I could almost see him replaying every time he had chosen comfort over courage that night. Vanessa stepped closer to Priya. Can we please be clear? Are you saying this item belongs in the gala? I'm saying, Priya replied, that we should not move it until verification is complete. And how long will that take? Dr. Ellison lifted the magnifier again. Long enough to avoid making a public mistake. That sentence landed heavily. The donors stopped speaking. The camera stayed fixed. The red light still burned. Vanessa's jaw tightened. She knew the room was no longer following her. It was following the box. Then Priya looked toward the stage manager and said, "Pause the donor presentation." Vanessa stared at her. "You cannot be serious." Priya's voice remained calm. "I am." The entire gala seemed to hold its breath. And as the program lights dimmed above the stage, I knew the final verification had begun. What I did not know was whether the truth would restore a forgotten name, or tear open the wound I had spent half my life keeping closed. The donor presentation never began. The stage lights dimmed, then returned in a softer wash across the main hall. Conversations died one by one until even the clink of glasses seemed too loud. Priya stood beside the media table with Dr. Ellison, both of them speaking in low voices over the old fabric edge. Vanessa stood frozen near the front row. "This is unnecessary," she said. "We can handle verification privately." Priya looked up. "Not anymore." Those two words moved through the gala like a bell. No one was asking whether my box was embarrassing now. They were asking why a museum curator had stopped an entire Military Heritage Gala for something everyone had almost thrown aside. Brandon, still at the media station, lifted his hands helplessly. "The main screen is ready." Priya turned to me. "Mrs. Whitcomb, with your permission, we will magnify the stitching." I held the box for one more second before nodding. "Only the fabric," I said. "Only the fabric," she promised. The image appeared above the stage. A faded strip of cloth filled the large screen, its worn fibers enlarged until every crease looked like a valley. Then the red stitching came into focus. The room saw what Lily had seen first, but now no one could dismiss it as loose thread. The stitches were uneven only to careless eyes. Under magnification, the spacing repeated. Short. Long, long, short. A pause. Then another sequence. A woman near the donor table whispered, "That is not random." Dr. Ellison adjusted the image. "It is not a decorative repair." Vanessa's face tightened. Priya stepped closer to the screen. "What you are seeing is a patterned stitch sequence." It was hidden inside ordinary cloth, likely because ordinary cloth could pass through places paper could not. The room held still. Dr. Ellison pointed with a laser toward the red marks. "The spacing suggests directional notation. Not words exactly. More like route markers." A murmur rose and vanished. I felt Lily's hand find my sleeve. "A route," she whispered. I did not answer, because for the first time that night, I did not have to. Priya did. "When combined with the folded seams and repeated knots," she said, "this appears to correspond to a survival route map. Someone used stitch placement to preserve movement, direction, and safe passage." The box that had been called trash sat open beneath the screen, and the entire gala stared at it as if it had become heavier than every metal in the room. Owen Hale covered his mouth. "I remember now," he said. Priya turned toward him. "What do you remember?" "There was a name," Owen whispered. "In the old argument. A man blamed for breaking formation." Vanessa said, "This is speculation." "No," Owen said, stronger now. "Not just speculation. My father used to say the report was wrong. Priya looked back at the enlarged stitching. Dr. Ellison and I checked the sequence against the archived route references in the museum index. The pattern corresponds to a rescue corridor used during the Ardennes withdrawal. Dr. Ellison nodded. And one repeated marker aligns with a personnel tag missing from the public citation file. Then Priya said the name. Thomas Whitcomb. The sound left my body before I could stop it. Not a cry. Not a speech. Just one breath breaking under the weight of a name I had carried for more than 50 years. Marcus turned toward me slowly. Whitcomb, he whispered. Your brother. I closed my eyes. On the screen, Priya brought up a second image from the museum archive. A faded service notation appeared beside the magnified cloth. The hall read in silence as the mistake unfolded before them. Thomas Whitcomb had not abandoned orders. He had marked a hidden passage. He had drawn enemy attention away from wounded men and civilians so others could move. And the record that survived had reduced his choice to disobedience. A woman in the front row began to cry softly. Dr. Ellison's voice shook just enough for people to hear the humanity beneath the expertise. The stitch sequence supports an alternate account of the withdrawal. It indicates coordinated rescue movement, not desertion or panic. Priya added, the material, stitching method, and archived route references are consistent. This is not a family legend. This is evidence requiring formal correction. No one looked at me the way they had before. Not as an old woman causing trouble. Not as someone clinging to worthless things. They looked at me as someone who had kept a promise without demanding applause for the pain of keeping it. Marcus stepped closer. His eyes were wet. Why didn't you tell us? He asked. I looked at the screen, where my brother's name stood larger than it had ever stood in life. Because it needed to be true without needing me to beg anyone to believe it. Lily's fingers tightened around my sleeve. Vanessa stood beneath the live stream camera, pale and silent. Then Brandon's monitor replayed the earlier clip by accident, or maybe because someone online had already captured it. Vanessa's voice came through the speakers, crisp and polished. Sentiment isn't the same as historical value. The entire room heard it again. This time, beside the name Thomas Whitcomb. Vanessa reached toward Brandon. Turn that off. But the damage no longer belonged to the screen. It belonged to everyone who had seen her choose image over truth. I did not smile. I did not speak. I simply held the box while the room understood what it had mocked. And as Priya prepared the formal announcement for the museum record, one question remained hanging over the gala. If truth had finally arrived without revenge, what would justice look like now? The room became so quiet that the soft hum of the live stream equipment sounded louder than anyone's breathing. Only minutes earlier, people had looked at my old box with embarrassment. Now they looked at it with the same respect they had reserved for the medals locked behind polished glass. No one hurried to speak. No one laughed. Even the donors who had been eager to keep the evening moving remained seated, watching Priya carefully organize the documentation while Dr. Ellison continued photographing every section of the fabric. Vanessa lowered her eyes for the first time that evening. She no longer stood at the center of the room. The truth had quietly taken that place from her. For a moment, I saw something behind her embarrassment that looked almost like fear. Not fear of me. Not even fear of the museum. Fear that the perfect evening she had built to prove her worth had revealed the one thing she never wanted people to see, that she knew how to manage appearances better than she knew how to honor people. Around me, I noticed people avoiding one another's eyes. Some had whispered. Some had smiled. Some had simply remained silent. Now that same silence belonged to them instead of me. It was a different kind of silence. one filled with reflection rather than judgment. Brandon's monitor continued displaying the live stream. Comments poured across the screen faster than anyone could read. Several viewers had already clipped the earlier exchange. Vanessa's own words appeared beside the enlarged image of the stitched cloth. Sentiment isn't the same as historical value. No editing could remove them. No explanation could change the order in which the world had witnessed the evening unfold. The camera had remembered everything. It had captured the laughter, the hesitation, the rejection, and finally, the truth. Vanessa quietly approached Brandon. "Can that clip be removed?" He hesitated before answering. "Not anymore. It has already been shared." She slowly stepped back without another word. For the first time since the gala began, she had no audience willing to follow her version of the story. Marcus finally walked toward me. Not halfway. Not cautiously. All the way. His voice trembled. "I'm sorry." I looked at him without anger. "I thought keeping the peace would protect everyone," he said. "But I understand now. I wasn't protecting anyone. I was protecting myself." His voice broke on the last word. I could see the realization settling into him, not as a sudden emotion, but as a memory of every small moment he had chosen comfort over courage. He was not only apologizing for that night. He was seeing the pattern of his silence for the first time. I nodded gently. Silence always protects someone. The question is, who pays for it? Marcus lowered his head. "I should have stood beside you." "You should have stood beside the truth," I answered quietly. "There is a difference." He closed his eyes. This time, no one defended his silence. Lily stepped closer and rested one small hand against the old wooden box. "So, it was never just an old box." I smiled softly. "No. It never was." She looked toward the large screen where Thomas Whitcomb's name remained displayed. "I think I understand now." "What do you understand?" "That beautiful things are not always valuable. And valuable things are not always beautiful." I felt tears gather in my eyes. That may be the most important lesson this evening has given us. Priya carefully closed the museum documentation folder. Facing the audience, she spoke with calm certainty. Effective immediately, the museum will begin the formal historical review recommended by today's findings. The evidence presented tonight will become part of the official archival process. No applause followed. The announcement deserved something quieter. People stood instead. One by one. Veterans first. Then donors. Then museum staff. Finally, everyone else. No one had been instructed to stand. No one looked around for permission. Respect simply moved through the room on its own. Vanessa remained seated for several seconds before slowly rising as well. Not because anyone demanded it. Because remaining seated would have said more than standing ever could. I held the box gently against my chest. Not as proof. Not as victory. Only as the promise it had always been. Thomas Whitcomb's name had finally returned to the place where it belonged. No argument had accomplished that. No revenge had accomplished that. Only truth. Evidence. Witnesses. And the patience to wait until all four stood together. As the audience slowly began leaving their seats, Marcus quietly asked if he could carry the box for me. I smiled and shook my head. Not yet. There was still one promise left to fulfill. And although honor had finally been restored, healing had only just begun. Later, When the hall had emptied enough for footsteps to echo again, Priya asked if the museum could prepare a protected case for the box. Not a storage shelf. Not a back room. A protected case. I looked at the old wood, the cracked brass, the worn corners my hands had touched for more years than I could count. Yes, I said softly. But the box stays with the cloth. Priya nodded. They belong together. Lily stood beside me, quiet now. She no longer looked at the box with curiosity alone. She looked at it the way children look at something they know they must remember carefully. Marcus waited until no one else was speaking. Then he came to me with both hands open. I cannot undo tonight, he said. No, I answered. You cannot. His eyes filled again. And I cannot undo all the years I never asked why you carried certain silences. That is true too. He swallowed hard. But I can begin differently now. I looked at him for a long time. Forgiveness is not pretending pain never happened. It is deciding pain will not be the only thing left. You can begin, I said. By teaching Lily to ask before she judges. Lily reached for Marcus's hand. He held it. There are people who do not need to prove they were right immediately. They only need enough patience for truth to stand up at the right time. I had waited half a lifetime for that moment, and when it came, it did not arrive as thunder. It arrived as a name spoken correctly. Before leaving, Priya placed a temporary label beside the display. Thomas Whitcomb. Verified historical review pending. I touched the edge of the case. I stood there for a long moment before speaking. My fingers rested against the glass, but in my mind I was no longer in the museum. I was young again, holding a promise I had not understood would take half a lifetime to fulfill. Thomas, I whispered, I kept it. For the first time in more than 50 years, saying his name did not feel like opening a wound. It felt like closing a door that had been left swinging in the cold. Lily leaned against me. Marcus stood behind us, silent, but not in the way he had been before. This silence was different. It was respectful. It was learning. And as I walked out of the City Military Museum that night, I understood something I wish I had known sooner. Value does not become real only when others finally see it. It was real all along. Even when they called it trash.